Hello there, very good evening and welcome to tonight's program, Transition into Government. I'm your host, Eddy Layne, and I have with me via Zoom this evening Steve Ninvalle. He is one of the candidates of the People's Progressive Party Civic for the March 2nd, 2020 elections. I also have Anthony Veira, another candidate of the PPC, as well as Brendan Ashley, the former regional chairman of Region Number One, and of course, he is a candidate of the PPPC. Gentlemen, good evening and welcome to tonight's program.
Good night.
Good evening, and thanks for having us on the program, Edward.
All right, so I know the figures are now public. Everyone knows the results of the March 2nd general and regional elections.
Yes, good evening.
And I think they recognize that the People's Progressive Party has won those elections by 15,416 votes, to be exact. If I can go through the numbers for the public's consumption again, the APNU AFC got 17,920 votes, and the People's Progressive Party Civic, the APNU AFC got 217,920. The People's Progressive Party Civic, 233,336, which gives you a 15,416 difference. We have completed the recount. We have completed the verification of the 10 administrative regions, or what we call the 10 electoral districts, with regards to those results. What is left now to be done is really for us to move to the other stages of the process, which would be the chief elections officer preparing his report, and then that goes to the commission, etc., etc. What I will do, though, is to first give each one of you a chance to maybe look back in a minute or two on the process that got us here after March 2nd. We should have had a government that is almost, or at least 3 months old already. The fact of the matter is we're still here to have an official declaration. So maybe we can look back at the process briefly before we get into tonight's full discussions.
Yeah, if Edward, if I may be able to go first, I must, it would be remiss of me if I do not congratulate the PPPC team that would have worked on this. I call it a resounding victory. I think the people of Guyana, if I look back, are being robbed a chance to actually move forward in a smooth way. We would have remembered in 2015, when I still really don't think that the PPPC was really defeated in that election, and I must say that because there's a petition I think still going on. But we would have gracefully exited. Now the shoe is on the other foot, and we find that every single day, every single week, the goalpost is being shifted. And when you go to the average person on the street, people are very, very tired about this continuing process. People are very, very tired. So I think that we now have the proof of the pudding. Congratulations again to our team that worked hard. And I think the knee needs to be moved from the neck of the Guyanese people. We have suffered long enough, and we will die of asphyxiation if this continues. So we understand where it is, we understand the processes, we understand that we have won. It is time to move on now.
Tony.
Good night, viewers. I have to say again that 2 months ago, I wouldn't have believed we would have gotten to this stage. So it's taking time, and it is very laborious, and it is very depressing, but in fact, it is progressing. I wouldn't have given a plug nickel to see us arrive at this point, having made a declaration whereby we have exposed Ringo's transgressions. We have established that the PPP, in fact, have 15,400 and something votes, 15,419. Is that what you said?
Or 15,416.
Yeah, well, I have, yeah. So it's making progress, but now we have this other spurious, ridiculous matter of dead people and migrated people voted in the election to the tune of 80,000. I don't know where this number of 80,000 comes, but it adds a new dimension to what was already a very ridiculous situation. And one can only say that whoever would believe something like that, well, that's their problem. It boggles my imagination that anything like that can be done in a system which has been described by many of the observers as a very comprehensive and robust system, and would be impossible for, given the photographs on the place of poll matching the persons actually voting, it'd be impossible for it to go totally unnoticed until now. And most of the claims, they come up with 200 names, and you find people saying that they were actually in the country and voted, and they show their ID cards. It's repudiating all of the nonsense they're putting forward. But then they're being helped, and this is something I have to say, because I was just looking at HDTV, and they have a newscast where they're alleging that they interviewed random people in the public, and they produced 4 people speaking, and 3 of the 4 is saying that the ranger must be sworn in. They only found 1 man, but if you collect 10 names or 10 interviews with 10 different people, you are obligated by fairness to report what the majority of them said, and the bias with which the majority of them said. You can't just hide of 7 people interviewed, you hiding 4 of them and only showing 3 who said they won. So that's the kind of mischief they're up to. They're actually going around telling people that they won, and that the PPP has conspired with GCOM. Of all the things to accuse them of conspiring with GCOM, which is totally compromised in favor of APNU. So it's very annoying, and frankly, we are now in the hands of the chairman. The chair will have to exercise her independence and support what is right.
Brandon.
Thank you, Edward. Well, to begin with, I think the patience of the Guyanese people, noting of an election that went smoothly and fairly on March 2nd, and it's very much annoying to the very people who would have celebrated twice, saying that they would have won these elections, now coming out to say that the elections weren't credible. And so it's beyond the definition of being hypocritical. They know exactly what they would have done, because as we know, the declarations that were made prior to now in the 9 regions except Region 4, we had no problems with them until we reached to Region 4. And then some way Mingo waved the magic wand and give some numbers that would have seemingly allowed them to win the elections. But in this modern time and age, you cannot, in front of the Guyanese people and in front of the world, try to rig an election. This behavior, this display of these persons on the APNU AFC side would have conformed the things that us, the young generation, the youth of Guyana would have been hearing about rigged elections prior to 1992, that is now coming to the floor. And when you speak to young people across Guyana, and even in this region that I belong to, you will hear them clearly stating that they want President-elect Ali to be sworn in and the PPP to take a seat of government and ensure that the commitments we've made in our manifesto while we were campaigning, that it starts to be implemented, because for too long, for not only the last 3 months, but for 5 years, the Guyanese people would have been shortchanged with the idea of having a good life. And instead of that, they would have had tremendous hardship reaching them, ranging from unemployment, ranging from the social programs that the PPP would have implemented in our tenure in government. And we would have made such a commitment while we were campaigning to ensure that those social programs are returned and even become better, not only for the persons of one ethnicity or for one particular region, because oftentimes during the tenure of the APNO AFC government, we believe we probably thought that similarly Guyana was Region 4 or Georgetown specifically. And so what transpired from March 3rd, when we know that they knew that they would have lost the elections to now, is a set of mamagizing or shenanigans to say that they don't know how to come out and accept that they were defeated and to concede. And that's what they need to do, and to ensure that they demit, and so that Guyana can move forward in its developmental path, because Guyana definitely will be a prosperous nation with the right type of leader, and that is the right government, and that government is going to be led by Dr. Ali in a matter of days from now.
All right, so I want us to spend some time to talk about moving this process forward. We have completed one phase, like I said initially, that is the recount and tabulation and or certification of those regional, the ballots from each region. Simply, we got an idea of what exactly were in those boxes. To move forward from this now is obviously for the Chief Elections Officer to prepare, to put the matrices together to prepare his final report, which will have the regional breakdown for each region, the breakdown for each political party, and for that report to be sent to the Commission, where we expect a declaration. But what we've been seeing happening, the misinformation, the propaganda, is people like Harman and so on talking about tabulation is not verification and not certification, and all sorts of foolish statements coming from, and clearly it's because of the fact that you have a group of people who are desperate to hold on to power. Having known the numbers since March 3rd or March 4th, the latest, tried every trick in the bag, and they were unsuccessful. You now have them coming up with all sorts of statements. And as we go down, I want us to discuss some of these statements that they've been making and so forth. But this is where we are. You're hearing that there is no confirmation that the PPP won the elections, and there is no way you can refer to Dr. Irfan Ali as president-elect. But I want to share, before I indulge you, I want to share Article 177 2B of the Constitution, and we're going to have some discussions around this. So that article states, and I quote, where there are two or more presidential candidates, if more votes are cast in favor of the list in which a person is designated as presidential candidate than in favor of another list, that presidential candidate shall be deemed to be elected president and shall be so declared by the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission. I read this to make the point that we're hearing statements coming about GCOM nullifying elections, GCOM cannot declare the results of the elections, and all sorts of things. Tony, what do you make of these kinds of statements as against what Article 177 2B of the Constitution says?
You asking me?
Yes, you go ahead, Tony.
Well, I listened very carefully to Mr. Nandala. I listened very carefully to Timothy Jonas. I listened very carefully to Mr. Ralph Ramkaran. And their opinion, which is a pretty good legal opinion because those are three top legal minds in Guyana, their legal opinion is that GCOM is not competent to take objections as have been presented to it and investigate those, because GCOM is not structured as an investigative organization. It's basically to count and declare votes, as you have just read 177. So that is my opinion. My opinion is that if GCOM does what GCOM is supposed to do and stick within the four corners of its constitutional mandate, it has no choice but to declare the numbers that we heard, which is the win by 15,000 votes. They have no option but to declare it. Anything else that they do will attract sanctions. In Venezuela, for example, given a clear situation like this, which has happened in Guyana, in Venezuela, the American government doesn't recognize Maduro as president. They recognize the leader of the opposition as president.
Edward, if I'm allowed to just add to a little what Tony has said, the time market has closed. No one can buy any more time. And this has been, since the no confidence motion, you would have found that the government, the APNU party, AFC, has been trying to buy time in every single thing that they have done. That time is over. And as Tony rightfully said, there's a structured way in which GCON can work, and there's a way in which they cannot work. They are constitutionally bound to do a job in this way. And I think what is happening now, because of the fact that the APNU AFC has been caught with their pants down, their bag of tricks have run out. Now, there are not many other things that their bag of tricks have run out. Yes, of course, it has. Because as of March 3, it was full. And they started using and using and using. And then people started expecting these tricks and knowing how to deal with it. When Tony first started, he said he never expected it to go this long. I never envisaged in my wildest dreams that in June, I would still be waiting for my party's presidential candidate to be sworn in, because there was no doubt about what will happen in the election. When I say what will happen, because we work on the ground, we listen to people, we listen to how aggrieved they are, we listen to how vexed they are, we listen to their frustrations, and we worked on the ground. And to have a party try to switch this up with a bag of tricks, it will not work. And as we rightfully said, sanctions are waiting to be implemented. We love this nation. If you do, then you're wasting time right now. The days that are going by, you could be planning for the next elections. And that is what I think they should do.
I want to say that it's very much heartrending to know that the AFC would conveniently alter that GCOM is an independent body, and yet on the other hand, they're telling GCOM what they should or should not be doing. And so I would want to say that GCOM as an independent constitutional body should carry out its mandate, as Anthony would have said, within the realms of its constitutional mandate. And so that we have had the national recount done, we have all, and the only thing that GCOM should be doing right now after the is to put together the report with the summary of the observation report, and ensure that of Guyana get the choice they would have made. Let the will of the people be respected.
We get
the will of the people in 2020 is having Dr. Irfan Ali as the president, PPC as the government, because they would have seen what the PPC stands for. They would have seen, and we all knew. Yes, hello? Hello?
We seem to be getting some serious difficulties there with your audio right now. We can hardly decipher what you're saying. Maybe because of
You hear me, ready?
maybe because
Hello?
of location. Yes, maybe because of location, we're getting some challenge with your audio, the internet connection. But
Okay.
to add to what Brendan would have said, and both Steve and Tony, is that the laws are clear. The Representation of the People Act is clear, and all the other laws governing elections and the functions of GCOM are clear. GCOM's primary role is to administer the elections and to count or tabulate the votes in the elections and to
And be clear.
declare the results.
That's right.
Whichever party got, that is their primary role. Parties are allowed to have a recount or what we call a final count. We have gone through a final count. Now that we have completed the final count, what GCOM is required to do is to declare a winner. Declare votes cast for each political party across the country, and based on the numbers, then we know who exactly wins the election. The nation, the world already knows that progressive participants has won the election. Therefore means, regardless of what, GCOM can only, and if you look at Article 171 2B again, what the very last sentence there said, or let me read the entire thing just for clarity. It states where there is two or more presidential candidates, if more votes are cast in favor of the list in which a person is designated as presidential candidate, than in favor of another list, that presidential candidate shall be deemed to be elected president and shall be so declared by GCOM. It didn't say that GCOM should nullify the votes his party received. It didn't say that GCOM should investigate the votes that his party received. It says that GCOM shall declare that person as the president. Dr. Irfan Ali, the list of which Dr. Irfan Ali is the presidential candidate, has received 15,416 more votes than the list that came in second, which is the APNU AFC. So the law is clear. It's quite simple.
But it's even a little to add to that, Edward, is that you have a place whereby all of your objections can go. That's an election petition. You have that. So to two times to say that you have won, and now the recount, and you're saying the same election that you have won is now fraud, then it's being very disingenuous of a party. And I'm saying this is now trickling down to your supporters. This nation is crying. This entire nation is crying. This entire nation needs to be nurtured. We're going through two crises right now. And to have people be so uncaring and self-centered, because it's just a few, it is just a few, to be so self-centered as you will take this nation, advantage of this nation, I would want to say, just to suit your own personal interests. That for me says a lot. And the credibility of your party goes with that. It goes with that because a lot of people have been so turned off by what has happened. I was speaking to a retired magistrate today, and his words relating to what is happening coming out of APNU AFC, he said it is nothing short of vulgar. Nothing short of vulgar. And a lot of their own supporters are turned off by this. Turned off. I was speaking to a staunch supporter just 2 days ago, and words to me said, Steve, I'm fed up with this thing right now. I just want this to move on. He really can't come out and say, well, I know my party mess up and so forth. What he is saying, that is what he's saying in other words. My party messed up. Let us move on. Yes, y'all have win. We'll come back in the next 5 years. And that is what is supposed to be said. And if you are a leader, or if you are leaders, that is what you will do. because you cannot continuously harm, because I look at this as harming this nation because of your own agendas.
Tony.
Just to comment on the same thing. I think that their game plan is clearly to cause as much disruptions as possible, to force some sort of examination into some of these observations, as spurious as it may be, and to stay in power for another year or two as we sort out this mess. But the Constitution doesn't provide for it. However, up to this time, seem to live in denial that the Constitution does not allow it, that GCOM must declare a winner next week, and that we have to move on. They want to have these objections ventilated at the level of GCOM and declare the election invalid, and then go to another election so that they could sit down in office for another year or two whilst we figure the whole thing out. That is not going to work. This country can't afford to do that. We have an oil industry which is very embryonic at this time, just emerging, and the oil is flowing already, and we have no laws to protect Guyanese or to make sure that Guyanese participate economically, meaningfully from their own oil industry. Not only at the level of the profit sharing agreement, but at the level of the local content. The local content law that is being contemplated is ridiculous, patently ridiculous. So we have to move on. So next week, I don't see how GCOM could escape from making the declaration which they are supposed to do legally, which is to declare a winner. And in this case, it happens to be Dr. Finale.
But Edward, if I can just coming for a short minute or so. If you notice how these goalposts have been moving, you've had demands being made on GCOM by agents of the APNU AFC. GCOM must answer us by Friday at this time. You've had that. You've had about talks about the discipline services and their votes. You've had allegations about dead people voting, people being out of the country whose names were scratched. And every day you have persons coming up and say, well, listen, my name was on that list that was sent by the police, and I was here and I voted at this. And it is going on and on. And it becomes ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It has become comical. And I would have thought, I have not been around in I was not old enough in the Burnham time with the rigging. But I would have thought that if you had a plan to do something, then you would come up with something that would at least make a little sense. This does not make sense. The world sees it, it does not make sense. Everyone sees it except a few people in this party. And I'm saying again that this country is tired of this. We have to move on. We need to move on. And we will move on.
They see it. They just don't want to accept it. There's a big difference. They see it. I'm sure they see it. They're not stupid. They just will not accept it.
But they need to. What they need to realize is that they are all left alone, and will be isolated.
Right. That's right.
Because every other political party that contested the elections in this year agreed that the recount process was fair and credible, as well as the statements of poll of March 2nd.
That poor guy has problems with his audio.
Incredible, and so only be making.
I think the internet connection in the Region 1 area may be very, very bad. So it's we can hardly understand what Bretnell is saying. But the point is, and I think if I can pick up from where he would have left off before we move on to some of the other issues that we have to address, is that it is only the APNU AFC, and I think, Tony, you made the point that they knew. They knew as at March 3rd, the latest.
Yeah. Yes.
that they
Yes.
lost the elections. They knew the
Yeah.
numbers because they claim that their SOPs match Mingo's numbers. But we haven't
But none
seen
are
those
shown.
SOPs.
No one has seen that. Indeed,
We
no
haven't
one has
seen
seen
them.
that.
You
And if you
know,
have won, then you would want to put it out for everyone
obviously,
to see. Yeah.
obviously you're going to present your, and I always use this example. If I win the lottery and I show up
I
at the
gotta
Guyana
present the
Lottery
ticket.
Company, hey, I won the lotto. He said, where is your
Where's
ticket?
the
I said,
ticket?
I ain't showing you my ticket, but I want the money. It is the same thing. It is the
Yes,
same
indeed.
thing. You claiming
It
you
is.
won the lotto, but you don't want to show the SOP, which is your ticket.
All right.
And that is the
Okay.
problem that we have. So coming back though to what has to happen, the reality is Mr. Lowenfield has to put the matrices together, get the results together for the various parties, do a summary of the observation report. And I want to make the point that nowhere in the order does it permit Mr. Lowenfield to insert his opinion and to make recommendations.
But
We
it's very
know that Mr.
straightforward.
Lowenfield is compromised. We
It's
know
very
that
straight.
Mr. Lowenfield is compromised, and if he has to
Yep.
make recommendations, we all know what those recommendations will be. So he has to do that, submit that report to the commission. The commission may examine, have their discussions, their debates, whatever. At the end of all of this, the Guyana Elections Commission, through its chair, Madam Justice Retired Claudette Singh, can only do one thing. That is to declare the results of the elections, the votes for each political party, observation reports, and the frivolous, baseless claims of fraud and irregularities. APNU can put that together, put their battery of lawyers together like Boston and Basil Williams and the others, and they could head to the Supreme Court. You know, they could put those brilliant legal minds that they have there to head to the Supreme Court.
I think they understand that too. I think I think they very much understand that Mr. Lowenfield does not have a lot of elbow room, but it still baffles me, and I'm still perplexed as to having known all of this, that you can still be masquerading and still be selling this sort of rhetoric to your constituency. And for me it tells of something underlying, something greater that is underlying. And I would just hope, for the sake of their constituency too, that they can just straighten up and fly right. And that is not something that is usual with the APNU AFC. But we are now winding down. The people of Guyana, most people understand that the PPP have won. You find that there are some people who live outside of this country who tend to instigate. They are not here. As I was telling one of my friends in the
I'm coming
United
to
States,
that. I'm glad that you made that point, because I'm coming to this
yes,
incitement.
he's in they do a lot of incitement. So I had to tell a friend of mine who lives in the United States, I said, who feels it knows it. I am here. I am here every day. I am on the ground. You way up in the United States and you're throwing your bricks, because of the fact that you really don't even care what happens through all of this incitement that you're doing. So we have to be extremely careful, because so many things can spin off from this sort of rhetoric. So many things can spin off from you not wanting to accept what it is for your own agenda, and you've trickled that down to your constituency. So I'm very glad that the president-elect would have met with the commissioner of police today, and certain things were hammered out, and they had certain discussions that it relates to that too, because law and order needs to be upheld in this country. And from what I'm seeing is that some persons don't want that to happen.
But what is happening, before I bring you in here, Tony, what is happening, I'm happy that you raised the point about inciting, because we recognize that a lot of racial statements are being made, and you know, on both sides. And we, through our General Secretary, did say to our supporters, look, don't get caught up in the racial and racist comments that are being, that you push to the level and so forth. You look to the future. You have won elections. We're about to embark on exciting times ahead of us with a young, vibrant president and a team that is filled with experience and ideas to take our country forward. But when we look at what is happening in the camp of the APNU AFC, it is disturbing. And for this reason, before we get into the conversation about the racist statements and the attempt to incite racism and to divide and set strife among our people, the AP and UFC have now gone back to their 50-year-old strategy, the best strategy that they have, maybe for the last 50, 60 years, how long they're wrong. And that is to try to use racism as one of their tools, you know, to divide and to put our people against each other. I want to play this video for you guys before we move forward with our discussions. I'm trying to get the video here, guys. So I want you to listen to this. To me, nothing so fire. 83 votes have been null and void, appreciated for wanting our 6-digit stamp. So the people in Sapphire, their votes are not important. You could just print off on the car or print on the side unimportant. Brand of racial injustice at me really enraged. Because it seems that the case for tabulating 41 key scores roughly is that GCOM should not disadvantage any voter. So what about the 81 ballots from Sapphire? What about the discipline service ballots? They important black force hackers. No discipline service, the army one. You heard that. These are people who are supposed to be representing a political party to try to create the scenario of the people in Sapphire who are predominantly Afro-Guyanese, that their votes don't matter, but the people on the East Coast who are predominantly Indo-Guyanese, their votes matter. And to incite that the discipline services, and it's the reality, we have to face it. The discipline services is predominantly Afro-Guyanese, to say that their votes are not being counted, and to come up with an ugly statement like black votes matter. It is to incite people. It is to put one ethnic group against another. And these are the things, as you mentioned, Steve, that when the president-elect met with the commissioner of police today, this is one of the issues that were raised, where people are trying to incite and to create strife and to put our people against each other to somehow lead to maybe violence. I hope not, after the official declaration. Having recognized they lost elections, this small cabal is now attempting to use the Guyanese people, to use race baiting as their next strategy. Tony, I'll take you here first on this one.
No, I totally agree. That's exactly what the game plan is. They have executed what is, to all intents and purposes, a military coup d'etat. They could have denied it as much as they want to deny it, but the only reason we're sitting here having this discussion about this huge wait between March the 2nd and now was because of two things. One, this country has experienced electoral violence on more than one occasion since independence, and very big violence. They're threatening to instigate that violence if something is not done about the fact that they lost an election. I can't quite understand what would be their request, that we should just forget they had an election, let them continue to be in government, and deny the Guyanese people their democratic right to have the government of their choice. The second aspect is, of course, having that army standing by. They risk all these things that they do because they know they have they could call the army out on us. So this is why we have to play our cards very carefully. We have to expose the fact that these are all lies. As onerous as the task might be, it is a task that has been given to us, and we are going to have to perform it, which is to expose the lies which that two guys there were perpetrating a moment ago. I can't say that I understood fully everything that it was said because the audio was not very good. However, I understand they're saying that in Sofia there was some mix-up and the boxes were denied, and on the East Coast the boxes were allowed. But the fact is that they were forgetting to identify the reason why the boxes on the East Coast. Apparently, Mingo and his secretary had instructed the returning officers of certain polling stations to deliberately leave out those things from the boxes. There is no such evidence that that happened in Sofia, not at all. So we have to just pay attention to the lies and expose the lies as they come up and let the people make their own decision. So we have our thing cut out for us here. Our friend said that they have a bag of tricks. Their bag of tricks turned out to be a box of bricks, and they inside, and they really have no way how to come out.
Eddy, it's unfortunate to have listened to the video and listen and look at the video footage that you would have shown just now. It's quite unfortunate that you could have people coming up with things like that. But it even shows the importance of having counter media outlets whereby you can counter these things and such as what you're having here right now. The thing is that the party that will soon be in opposition wants to win by any means necessary. And that is the only thing that matters. They don't care how it sounds, where it sounds, who it is, who listens to it. Their goal is to do it by any means necessary. And we have seen it. That is why over the months we have seen this comical display. It is nothing less than a comical display that has now, is soon to end. And now that it is about to end, you are clutching at every single thing possible. Bag of tricks is running out, so you're clutching at everything possible. My hope is that this country and the people in this country who live so well together, live so well together, do not buy into what the APNO AFC party is telling them. And we have people, as I said before, people who want to move on, people who have already moved on. I can tell you as of today, there are people saying congratulations, congratulations, and these are some very staunch supporters of the APNO AFC. They have realized that the show is over. Okay, we went, we had a good laugh, we whatever it is now over. It is time for us to move on to serious business. Serious business means not just saying, oh, the good life. The good life has turned out to be the good lie. And what will be happening is that people would really see what the good life is. Because of the fact that I just want to give you a little thing that happened about a year and a half ago. I got into a little accident with a car. A guy was drunk and he slammed into the car. He had to go to the police station. So I called my bodywork man and I said, listen, let us have this car repaired. It was a Thursday. And he said to me, he said, Steve, you're the first person for the week. He turned to me, he said, 3-4 years ago, people with some little scratches like this used to come into my body workshop. He said, now some people with some big dents like this pass in. And his words to me, as God is my witness, he said, Steve, give me back your party buy. And he didn't have to pay. He said, I vote for the APNO AFC in 2015. He said, give me back that party because you know what? I used to eat body. And this is what people want. They want to move on. They want to be comfortable. And right now, no one is comfortable. No one is comfortable. And if there's any introspection, then you will understand that, listen, the game is over. It is time for movement. Dr. Irfan Ali is the president-elect, will be sworn in soon, and let us move Guyana forward. This is what it's all about.
Certainly. And Steve, I can echo the sentiments of you because I'm in the streets, if you want to call it. I move around a lot. I have a business. I interact with people, and I know how people are suffering. I know how they were suffering, and they, for the last 5 years, and they're still suffering. And like you said earlier, we have, as we call it in the countryside, a double whammy. We have the pandemic, and then we have a situation with a political stalemate in our country where you have a small group of people, self-interest politicians, self-serving politicians, who by no means want to give up power, even though they lost the elections, even though the world recognized that they have lost the elections. This is a group of people. And when you hear people like Harman and so on coming out, you know that they're singing for their supper. You know they want to protect their perks, and these people got a lot of things to protect, A lot of skullduggery and the super salaries. Harman to come out and say that. So Harman first started with dead people voting. We exposed them. Many of the people who they claim were dead exposed them themselves. And they said people were out of the country. Then they realized they're going to have difficulty proving that a man has left the country when he can simply produce his passport to show that he was in the country and there is no stamp. They changed that to out of jurisdiction. Whatever that means, we don't know. Then they moved from that and they hang on to documents missing from boxes and, poll books. I was talking to a guy on one of the radio stations in the New York tri-state area last night. And a gentleman talking about poll books missing from ballot boxes. Poll books don't be in ballot boxes. So they manufacture these irregularities as they go along. And as my good friend Sanjeev Dattadin says, it's like throwing mud at a wall, hoping that something sticks. So then the 29 boxes on the East Coast, where Mingo, through his DROs, instructed the people to include the documents. And I maintain that those instructions are Mingo's instructions because one of the DROs came out publicly, several of the POs came out publicly. GCOM claimed that they have a statement signed by several DROs. The media keep asking them every single day for the past week to produce that letter, and we haven't seen that letter as yet.
So why doesn't Mingo come out and say something? Why we not hearing from Mingo? He say that I didn't say this or I didn't say, and this is what brings me to this point. Your complacency, your overconfidence has brought you to this stage. And as you rightfully said, you are now manufacturing things as you go on. So every day that something else some bean is spilled, you come up with this answer for it. And that answer will change if you ask them next week. My point remains, Edward, that we are a tired nation. We have gone through, since the no confidence motion, people say, I'm fed up. I'm fed up. I ain't able with this nonsense anymore. It went here, it went there, it went there, it went. Then you heard 60, they have to have 34 instead of 33, and a whole heap of craziness, which has been proved legally wrong. You're now reinventing it now. Guyana is tired. The PPPC has won. Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali is the president-elect to be sworn in. Let us move our country forward. This has nothing to do about racial preference. This has nothing to do with which constituency you have come from. The president-elect has said as of today, there is no witch hunting. We are about moving this country forward. The faster we get on that train, it is the better for this country. And this party, the PPPC, is about moving this country forward. We have seen it. We have seen it. And we have seen what the other party can do. When you have raised your salaries and you forgot about nurses and teachers and policemen and so forth, it tells you about the good life that you have for people. We are about moving forward.
Tony, I want to bring you in here because I want to spend maybe after this a few minutes to talk a little bit about our plans, programs, initiatives as are outlined in our manifesto. But I want to talk to you about one of the challenges that we now see the PPP, Dr. Irfan Ali and his government will be saddled with is what was done with the Guyana Sugar Corporation. You saw the memo, you saw the letter that is being circulated where Gaisuco is broke as we speak.
Well, that's been a chronic problem of Gaisuco for quite a few years. I wrote this morning about some of these things because I think that one of the reasons why I was asked to participate in this process is because I will have something to do with Gaisuco going forward. But let me give you one small example of how far down Gaisuco has gone. When I went on the board in 2015, 2016, I had asked for the yields of the various plants, ratoons, and so on. And I discovered a very strange phenomenon, which was that the fields didn't seem to benefit from plowing in any big way. That the plant fields had an increase in yield and not the rest. You know, for ratoon it went down very big, and in the past we used to see that some return of. So I went to the fields. I asked the board to give me permission to go to the field and examine what they're plowing and so on. And I discovered the tractor was pulling the plow, and I looked at Sangster, and who was the agricultural man. I said, well, why this plow? This was in 2016, the first part of the year, which was very dry. It wasn't wet soil. I told him, this tractor doesn't seem to me to be doing any capable of pulling that plow. He said, no, that's the right tractor for that plow. 180 horsepower tractor, 180 horsepower plow. When I came home the night and I sat down and I started to think about it, and I opened my documents to check it, I had the paper from the plow. I'd gone to Jenny Quip and I got the thing. The plow, yeah, the plow requires 180 horsepower, but Gaisuco was pulling it with a 180 horsepower tractor. The tractor, when you take out the amount of power it uses to walk, the amount of power for the alternator, the amount of power for the water heater, the hydraulic pump, is 120 horsepower tractor because 60 horsepower gone. And these fellas didn't understand what it was doing. They didn't look at the tractor and see that this thing can't pull. Gaisuco has to diversify. I had done some calculation in 2015 when we went to the Commission of Inquiry. My submission was that it seemed to me that we were producing sugar from our cane, and in fact, we should be producing ethanol from the cane. I showed that economically, we would actually double our income per acre, but that ultimately Gaisuco would have to diversify to something else. So I have some answers which can't be extrapolated at this point in time because the time is very short. But I do have some answers for Gaisuco, and I'm saying that Gaisuco is competing with Australia and with Brazil. Those two places don't have the kind of rainfall which we have. We have 100 inches of rain coming at 2 periods in a year, which is very, very unique. Very few countries have 2 rainy seasons in every year. In Trinidad, for example, the rain starts to fall in October and it goes on until around March. The rest of the year, from March until October, it's dry. Brazil, same thing. In Queensland, Australia, which is one of the best sugar producers in the world, their rainfall is 23 inches a year, not 100. And then you have low-lying land and only could drain when these cocos are open. So Gaisuco has inherent problems which cannot be resolved because we can't mechanize it, and therefore we have to use our initiative and think outside the box and introduce something new for it to do, which could be more in keeping with our climatic and land situation. So there are answers, and I'm sure I have the answers. We brought experts from the US when I was on Gaisuco board, and they agreed that Gaisuko has the potential to be a world-class aquaculture operation. And last year, for example, in the world, the entire planet, more fish were consumed, which were grown in farms on land and from wild cats in the ocean. So it's becoming a bigger industry than the sugar industry worldwide. So the answer is not to continue with sugar, but especially now with those fellas have lost track of what their technology is to grow sugar cane. So you would have to work on the management of Gaisuko. And some of the corruptions in Gaisuko also, I have to tell you, from what I saw on that board, it's frightening.
All right, we probably leave that for another discussion, but we have probably about 5 minutes or so to go. I want us to talk a little bit about our plans, programs, initiatives. As we move forward, we're transitioning into government, and we expect by sometime next week, Dr. Irfan Ali will assume office officially as the president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. We have made, and as Joe Hamilton put it today, you don't want to say promises. We have made commitments to the people of this country. Let us talk a little bit about those, Steve and Tony, quickly. Let us talk about our housing drive, what we have to do. Our economy is in really, really bad shape at the moment. How do we repair this? How do we move forward? We have maybe 5 minutes or so to just touch on this briefly as we prepare the transition fully into government.
As far as the going forward will be very heavily fueled by revenue from the oil industry. And we are going to have to find a way to renegotiate some of those provisions and to make sure that what we do receive is spent in a way which will not lead us to the Dutch course in time. We have to boost up our agriculture industry so that our rice farmers produce more like 60 bags per acre by giving them better roads, giving them a cheaper electricity so that the milling costs could come down, so that we make them competitive in the world. So basically, the first thing we have to do is sit down with Exxon and see if we could come to some arrangement whereby we could participate more meaningfully in our own oil industry. Because I have this feeling, and I think I'm right because I've spoken to Jan Mangal quite a bit on it. Trotman negotiated a deal whereby he would get more benefit than people of Guyana. It seemed to me, I have no compunction to mention it now because I do believe it fundamentally. So we have to undo some of those things. The rest of the manifesto is doable, and we just have to make sure that we get a proper revenue from this oil, and we set up our country to participate. This biggest problem, this country has 3 big problems. This come out of the IDB World Bank reports. One, the cost of electricity is too high, so the manufacturing process is not good. The IDB also reported that in Guyana, the private sector only accounts for 8% of GDP, when in every other part of Latin America and the Caribbean is 16%. We are 100% behind in terms of investment by the private sector. We all say that the private sector is our engine of growth, but we don't give the private sector enough growth. And if the private sector were to grow to 16% rather than 8%, you know how many jobs that would create in this country? It would double the amount of jobs that are currently available in the private sector. So we have a lot of work to do, and sitting around here since 2018 fighting up about keeping a pack of idiots in government who really can't run the ship. It's really a waste of time. I'm sorry I have to be so frank, but I get a little tired of this shenanigans be going on here.
Steve, quickly.
You should. It's gonna be. It's not gonna be an easy ride for our government, the PPPC government that's going into power, because if you look at what is happening with the Treasury right now, what we will be inheriting. But I understand and I know that we have competent persons within our group. We have seen that before. We have seen our housing drive from what we were doing before 2015, led of course by President-elect Irfan Ali, and we see what it is now. It's gonna be it's not an easy road, but with the competent people that we have, I don't want to use something that AFC APNU would have been using, but Guyanese will be seeing a much better life. And I think that we owe it to them. Again, we are tired and we are hurting. And this, as of next week, we'll be moving on to better rules.
Thanks to Steve. Thanks to Tony Vieira. Unfortunately, Brentnall could not have continued with us due to the quality of internet service in the Region 1 area. But Brentnall, we want to say thanks as well to you for joining us this evening. And of course, to our viewers, we want to say thank you so much. Remember, we just have a few more days. By next week, Dr. Finale will take office as the president of this country, and we will begin to implement our programs, policies, and initiatives to improve your quality of life in your community, in your regions, and in the country as a whole, as we return Guyana's economy rather, to a state where every single citizen, regardless of your political affiliation, regardless of your geographic location, we are going to build a Guyana for all Guyanese as we move forward together. Remember, our team is stronger together, and we are going to live up to that. Gentlemen, thanks again for joining us. And of course, to our viewers, we want to say thanks for being part of this program.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.